Okay, it's time for another live. I'm going to get this set up on 1 minute to 8. Oh, no, look at that. It's now 8 o'clock. So it's time for live. I'm back. I'm back and booming. Here I am. That just reaches. I think I'm a bit further back tonight. That's okay. We'll work it out. Just Ramming, Wonder and Whisky joined. No, that's me. Just Ramming joined. Good to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. I don't know how long I can put up with this microphone situation, to be honest, but I'll see how I go. I meant to fill my glass with water as well before I started. Not very organised tonight. Okay. Ezra Finn, been a while, Aaron. Good to see you back in the live. Good to see you. So what was I going to start with tonight? I was going to start with how I was going to talk a little bit, sort of like, I often dedicate my Monday live streams to a bit of a rant. I think that's been one of the more favourite themes. But tonight I'm also going to take questions, have a chat with you whilst I enjoy a dram. I've already pre-poured one here for myself. A nice healthy measure of a nice sherried whiskey there. Ooh, lovely. Okay, I'll get on to that. I'll talk more about that as we go. But in the meantime, I want to talk more a bit about some of the little rants that I've spoken about some of these things before. I ranted the other night about small cask aging. The other week, I should say, last Monday. Oh, Ezra, I've missed you joining in on the live stream, so I'm really glad you're here. Chapo68 joined. Good to see you, Chapo. So I've just got a few things I want to touch on here about some of the elements of sort of whiskey that I think are often overlooked, and sometimes sort of the comments that you read online about certain things, and the hype train that sometimes people get on about certain cask profiles, about certain types of whiskey, and sourcing of such. Now I was over in here's an example. I was over in Isla back in May, and I was very lucky to make it along to the Brooklady Open Day, which is where they were launching Event Horizon, the Octomore Event Horizon, the highly anticipated 12-year-old Octomore in sherry casks. It's a lovely whiskey. It's not a world beater. It's just a nice whiskey. It's a nice peated whiskey if you like that style of whiskey. Glenn Farkles 21 while I watch. Hey, I'm on a 20-year-old sherried whiskey myself, so I'll join you on that one, Ez. And my first sort of little rant here is just to say that about 1% of the crowd who were buying that bottle were walking out, and as they walked out of the room, they grabbed their bottle. As they walked out of the shop, they walked into the courtyard of Brooklady and went and promptly opened it up. And, whether it be within a group of friends or just themselves, they poured something into a glass and walked around and enjoyed it in the spirit of the moment of enjoying that whiskey. I'm not saying that's what everyone should have to do, but at the same time, it's all too often we're seeing sort of, this sort of leads into my first part of my rant. All too often, Whiskey Sec, Whiskey Saurus, 45 Finn, thank you so much for joining. We're seeing this trend happen where people are buying, it's not just a trend, this is an ongoing problem, I guess, but is it a problem? I want to ask you guys that as well. I mean, it's like people are buying for the purpose of investing in whiskey. Now, this is a whole nother topic on a video, I'm sure, for another night. But they're buying for the sole purpose to flip that whiskey later. Now, I put whiskey drinkers, broadly speaking, into three categories. Whiskey drinkers. So those whiskey drinkers are people who buy bottles and they open them, and they enjoy them. They enjoy them at home. They enjoy them at events, at parties, with friends, at barbecues, on a Sunday night, on a Monday night, whatever it is. And they make the most of that and of that purchase and enjoy it. They live in that moment, and when that cask is gone, there's something else around the corner. That's always the way with whiskey. But if you like one, jump on it, and then you can always come back to it later. So that was my first sort of point. Whereas you see, there's a second category of whiskey drinkers who might buy two of something, might buy three of something, and they'll open one, they'll enjoy it, and then they'll keep one or two aside for a rainy day later down the track. That's sort of me. If there's a whiskey I really like, I buy 2 bottles of it, because then I rarely buy more than 2. I can count on one hand the number of whiskeys I've bought more than 2 bottles of. Yeah, it's too good to sit on. Enjoy it now. That's a good point, Ezra. So you're definitely in the first category. Life should be about enjoying the moment. Don't, live in the moment. Live a little bit more impulsively, and you might enjoy yourself. So it's sort of like, that's that first category of whiskey drinkers. They buy a bottle as soon as they've left the bottle shop, or it's landed on their front door, they've opened it. And I fully respect that. I open my bottles about as quickly as that. They don't last very long around here. But at the same time, there's people who, like I say, who buy one for now and buy one for later. And the later one there's no set date of when to open that generally. It might be a milestone, might be a birthday, might be a special occasion. And then sort of like, I don't really sell bottles myself. I don't see the value in it personally. I'd rather open it and enjoy it with people who are around me who will appreciate it with me. I have sold 1 or 2 bottles before in my past, privately, which was sort of just like, it made sense to, because my palate had changed to the point where I didn't enjoy that distillery's flavor profile as much as I thought I did back when I bought it, and someone wanted it, so I sold it to them for a very fair price, and I ended up spending the money that I sold it for on more whiskey anyway. Haven't bought a whiskey, I haven't opened. There you go. I'm definitely category 1. I'm a rainy day guy too, stocking good shit for the future, want to drink plus. Stocking good stuff for later. Yeah, see, that's one way of looking at it, Whiskey Sec, is that if there's a flavor profile or a certain cask or a certain whiskey release that I really like, I will buy 2 of them. Like I said, I can count on one hand the number of whiskeys I've bought more than 2 bottles of, and for very good reason, because they either quite a special bottle to me, or I opened the first one and went, that's incredible, I need more than one backup. And that's fine. I've got friends who buy whiskey by the case, and that's also fine. However you want to buy your whiskey is entirely up to you. I've also got some friends who are avid whiskey drinkers. They love drinking whiskey. They don't buy many bottles. They drink mostly at bars. They like exploring bars around the world and visiting different bars. That's another way of doing it. However you want to drink it is fine. But it's sort of the third category, which it shouldn't bother me, because I take a fairly libertarian approach to this sort of thing, in that you do what you want to do with your bottles, and however you buy whiskey or enjoy it is up to you. But there was a recent example I encountered of someone who, and I can't go into that. This industry is way too small. What I mean is, like, you see people who often talk a lot about enjoying whiskey, and how they have it, like they have an epic collection of bottles that they love to enjoy. And it's like, and that kind of sounds like the kind of person where you go around to their house, like you come around to mine, and I'll have 20, 30, 40 different bottles open at any given moment. In fact, at one point I had about 100, or just under, I had about 95 or 100 bottles open bottles in the stash here. That's a reality of being a whiskey ambassador. A lot of them are work bottles, but they're open. So it's sort of like, and then about half of those are work, half of those are mine, and it's sort of like, well, just they're there to be open and enjoyed, and pour a dram and enjoy it. That's what it's about. But if you've got an epic whiskey collection and you don't drink whiskey, you don't explore it. You just explore the label and the exterior of it. I think you're really missing out on something, especially if the whole purpose of you purchasing it is so you can flip it later. I think it's not really the right category to be in. Like I say, I take a fairly libertarian approach to these things. So it's just sort of like it's each their own, but at the same time, I mean, without talking politics, it's just sort of like that whole sort of approach of, you know what, if you've bought a bottle and you have no intention of drinking it ever, and you only bought it so you can flip it, rather than being like, oh, I bought this and I found out years later that it's gone up in value, and I'm never going to drink it anyway, because I don't like that style of whiskey anymore. Your palate's changed. You now only drink mezcal because for some unknown reason. Then yeah, I don't see any problem in why you'd sell that. We actively discourage it, because we're at the society. We're a whiskey club. Our core focus is about opening bottles and enjoying them with members. So that's why you honestly, like, you don't see society bottles for sale very often, because it's like there's such a good range always coming out in Outturn each month. that ends like this stuff's being opened and enjoyed. I have maybe 20 society bottles that are my own. No, that's not true. It's a few more than 20 now, but it used to be about 20, and that I've bought, and I've stashed away for a rainy day. But I'll always come back to them. Yeah, hot dog extravaganza. If we can banish flippers from the society, I'd be fine with that. Honestly, if you're buying to sell, if you're buying to flip these whiskies, I think you're missing the point entirely. And I saw a recent example of this, and it wasn't society whiskies. I saw a recent example of someone who is only buying to flip, and I asked him, oh, well, what do you drink? What do you enjoy? If you only buy all these expensive and interesting whiskies and private label this and single cask that and society cask that or something, it's like, he said, oh no, I just drink Glenfiddich 12. I don't really enjoy the better whiskies. Just sort of, it's like, oh well, maybe take up knitting instead. I don't know. Calte asks, did you enjoy the whiskey infused salmon? There's some context behind that question, which I'll just let everyone know about. Earlier today, around lunchtime, around 2:00, sorry, I had a meeting with a chef at a great restaurant in Sydney and we're working with some flavour pairings, pairing up some different whiskey infusions and different sort of flavours for a dinner that they're hosting. It's not a society event; it's one that they're hosting at their restaurant, and they're using society whiskies. So I'll be co-hosting the event with him, with the chef and myself, talking through each dish and explaining each pairing. I can post a link up to our Facebook group or whatever for tickets for that, but I'm not sure how that works with that venue. But we'll see how that goes. The pairings were amazing. But devil's advocate, were it not for flippers, I wouldn't have gotten a 139.2 a tropical affair. Yeah, whiskey sec. Look, yeah. I mean, okay, fair enough. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that point because it's like it's someone else's loss then, and now they're never going to be able to open that and enjoy it. And I've not tasted 139.2, but I will soon be tasting the 139.1, the chomping on a herbal cigar. I'm looking forward to cracking that open. I might do that maybe on the live stream on Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday night this week. Just remember that live stream might be a bit precarious this Thursday, Friday, Saturday because with the Archie Rose pop-up bar all 3 nights. Andrew might be able to help out on 1 or 2 of those, and I've got another very keen member who's very keen to join in and do a live for us as well, which is exciting. The chef will understand the tea-smoked salmon from this month. I didn't see it in the story. Yeah. Well, tea-smoked salmon. We could have used that cask actually. That one's all reserved for Outturn. I am on 73.107. Cherry, chocolate and chutney. A 20-year-old from our deep, rich and dried fruits profile there. Just for those live for AR. Live from AR, I'm sure you mean SMN. Yeah, I might do live from AR. We could do a live stream from Archie Rose. I've just got to remember though, last time we did the pop-up bar at Archie Rose last year, it was 8:00 each night when I'm supposed to go live. We were slammed. I mean, like pumping out drinks, making single cask cocktails, and really sort of, going hard on those bottles and just like really pouring them out for everyone. It was a lot of fun, but there was no chance I'd be able to get on my phone at that point. The phone was definitely tucked away in the bag somewhere each night on those pop-ups. And I remember being absolutely wrecked each day as well. Like it was just, if you go from like, look, I know it sound like a soft city boy saying that, but it's true though. Like if you go from not working those kind of hours to suddenly working those kind of hours, it really does. It wears on you a bit. And I actually scratched a panel on my car driving home on one of those nights because I think I was just so tired and I didn't see this pole that I was turning anyway. It's all fixed now, but it's still like very, very frustrating. If it wasn't for flippers, there wouldn't be old cask, but they're £1,000, so it's double-edged sword. Yeah. If you're spending £1,000 on a bottle that came out in Outturn for $200, then all the power to you. The chutney, the dark chocolate and chutney in that is lovely. So that's, look, I mean, Monday's often a rant. Monday is often a rant. So that's what tonight's rant is about. is talking about how flipping doesn't help anyone really. If there's a bottling that you're after and you really want to miss and you really missed out on it, then I get it. But at the same time, there's always more whiskey. Something else will come around the corner, and there's often a chance for you to jump on something else and go, oh, well, I got that one instead. And that's the case of it. No Outturn previews tonight. Not yet. We're not there quite yet. But I'm working towards it. What's dramming? You mean what am I dramming on? 73-107. I'll hold that one up for the camera. Hopefully that makes sense. 73.107. Cherry chocolate and chutney. It's a 20-year-old from Distillery 73. Lovely cask, that one. That came out about 2 months ago. 2 or 3 months ago, that one came out. You know, some of the casks, some of the society whiskies that we get, I agree with the name on many of them. That one I agree with wholeheartedly. It's like cherries, chocolate, and chutney, all in glass, and a lovely 55.3% from a first fill ex Oloroso Hoggy. The Whisky Ambassador says, congratulations for your nomination, Scotch Whisky Ambassador of the Year. Thank you very much, the Whisky Ambassador. Very much appreciated. Love the feedback. Thank you. For those who don't know, yes, I've been nominated as Scotch Whisky Ambassador of the Year through the Icons of Whisky program. It's a very prestigious award. I'll be going to the dinner, the awards dinner next week, so that'll be good fun. And I'm up against some pretty heavy hitters. It's really humbling to be nominated, but I'm not holding my breath for a win on that one. I'm still after a bottle distilled in 1999, as you know, Matt. I've been hunting for 3 years. Came close to that rum. Distilled. Well, that was distilled 98, Cal. Sorry. We do get some 99s. Don't worry, we get some 99s through, which will be some of the 20-year-old stock coming through now, and next year. So keep an eye on 20-year-old whiskies, or keep an eye on 99 and Outturn. 99's an easy year to find for. 99's easy. It's when you're trying to get to sort of my birth year whiskies, they started getting a bit trickier, and well, obviously, the older you are, the harder it is to source those. But I was born in '84, so that's a '84 was a tough year for Scotch whisky. For those who know their Scotch whisky history, the Scotch whisky industry went through a very, very tumultuous time. Yes, Whisky Sec '83 as well. It went through a very tumultuous time in the early '80s there, especially 81 to sort of '83, '84. Lots of distilleries closed. Production was at an all-time low. It was sort of a real dip in the trade. And so therefore, trying to find casks. I'll tell you something right now, the Glenfarclas family cask from my year, from '84, it's not only is it one of the most expensive ones, but it's also one of the only ones that is ex-bourbon from that era, I should say. So it was bourbon cask. I feel like the distillery was sort of just doing a bit of lifeline filling at that point. I don't know my Glenfarclas history as well as, say, someone like Andrew would, but the distillery was probably just doing it sort of, eking along, keeping the stills running, probably running it twice a week or something, I don't know. Whereas, now they're running sort of much more fuller production line, just to keep up with demand. Some 99 rums coming out soon. That is true, Mr. Jasmine. I got my girl the 83 port cask, so I know you struggle. Yeah, there you go, 83 port cask. That sounds fun. S&M bourbon refill. Yeah, I think it was a bourbon refill bourbon at the 84 family cask. It was like a second fill bourbon cask. I've tasted it at the distillery, because they were very gracious and asked everyone in the tour group, "What's your birth year?" I should have said like 1964, but no, I said 84, and it's like. They gave me the bottle of the 84 and said, well, pour yourself a dram of your birth year family cask. It was very generous of them. And I did. It was like, and they said, oh, that's like one of the only bourbon casks from that era. I think it was a second fill. I've got a photo on my phone somewhere, which is what I'm talking to you on now, so I can't look it up right now. Caltite, you'll find some easy 99 stuff from Distillery 29. If you're looking for a smoky one from your birth year, we get quite a few from Distillery 29. From that era, from 98, 99, 2000 sort of realm. Yeah, birth year, Glenfarclas bourbon refill, but too expensive, such a tease. Yeah, look, it was a tough one for me because it's sort of like you go, it's nice. It's not sort of like 4,000 pounds nice. I guess that's whole sort of like, justifying it. Is birth year bottling so important? Are they important to you? If they are, then tell me. I'd love to hear in the comments. Are birth year bottlings really important to you? I mean, I find they're a fun novelty. I've got a few birth year bottlings, but nothing really substantial. Maybe like 5 or 6 bottles from my birth year. And I might open all of them on my 40th or something. I haven't really thought that far ahead. That's starting to really get much more, the cherry notes really starting to come out now. I recommend everyone wait a good 10 minutes and just, roll it around a bit. But even just nosing it for the first 10, 15 minutes. I know I'm talking some real whiskey basics here for a moment. Hey AD, send me that photo. Look, I've got some photos I've got to show you actually. Thank you for reminding me. It's always nice to have someone from Vintage House in the stream, so thank you so much. Whisky Jusmo joined. Welcome. So letting the vapors sort of bounce around, dissipate a bit, so you can get a bit closer into the actual flavors there always helps as well. That's where I'm talking whiskey basics. I didn't mean to go into that tonight. For those who just joined, just a bit of cherry chocolate and chutney, a 20-year-old single cask there. And my first part of the stream tonight was talking about the Monday Rant, and talking about how, it was sort of like those 3 categories of whiskey drinkers in that realm, and that was sort of like start with whiskey drinkers, drinkers plus collectors, and then flippers. I've got no problem with any of those really. It's just I do have a problem with the third type, as I said, and it's not really to get on any high horse or tell people what they can do or not do with their whiskey, but it's just sort of to say, if you're buying for the sole purpose of not drinking it, or at the very least, appreciating it on some level, I just don't get it. I don't get it. There's so many other things you could invest in instead that are actually a better return. Gets harder after you turn 25. Yeah, you're not wrong there. Big fan of birth year bottlings while you can afford them. Yeah, while you can, exactly. Hey, Matt, one time we can talk about oxygen and whiskey opening up versus oxidizing. You know what, SM Yan, I'm here right now, you're here right now. Why don't we talk a little bit about that? I've got an interesting theory about this, and I'm not alone in this one, but I firmly believe that for like 80% of whiskey, or even 90% of whiskey, improves in the bottle after it's been opened, after a few drams have gone missing. So the oxygen actually improves the whiskey in many cases. Now, just like it does when you've poured into the glass and you've waited 10, or in my case, 22, 23 minutes, there's the ethanol vapors have sort of like washed away now, and I'm getting right into the core of that spirit and the flavor and the cask-all integration there. The same thing happens in the bottle, just on a bigger level, in that the oxygen on that one actually just mellows it out often and takes that edge off, and just that initial edge. Now, when I say 80%, that might be a bit generous, but what I mean by that is like you'll get sort of like that. So ex-bourbon barrels, like sort of refill and second fill, maybe even some first fill bourbon barrels, they don't necessarily need that. I don't find they need that sort of that. So that sort of wipes out maybe 80% of the industry straight away. But sherry casks, I'd say almost indefinitely appreciate being open a little bit longer. And same can be said of some old whiskey as well, and even young whiskey. So yeah, it sort of works both ways. The only whiskey, however, and this is the sort of the other way around, I personally find most peated whiskey doesn't last as long in an open bottle as others. Now, there are exceptions to that rule as well. As recently a sherried peated whiskey I had that's been open for a few months now, and it's actually really improved. But other times it doesn't. It's sort of the peat sort of drops off a cliff. Anyone here who's ever opened a bottle of something like Lafroig 10, or even just young peated whiskey, they find just like it sort of the peat just sort of really goes after about 2 weeks after being open, which is kind of disappointing. And it's sort of like, I mean, you got to sort of get through it faster, I guess. I don't know. I'm getting lots of questions in here, so I'm going to just jump into some of these. Half full is optimum level. Yeah, that's a big claim, Whisky Jusmo, but yeah, I'll take that. Better return. You'd be pretty happy if you bought some Yamazaki before it took off. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you would be. I mean, it's the same. Look, they're sort of anomalies. They're sort of a bit like, if you bought some Yamazaki Sherry back then, or if you bought some Bitcoin when it was 6 cents a coin, and, all those kind of things. I get it. There are anomalies in every trade, in every sort of investment where, everyone's paying attention to the spikes instead of the long game. But I'm not here to talk investments nor politics. I told you that. Hey, mate, what are my chances of finding a 1960 bottle and seeing I turn 60 next year? Oh, Blackwood. Ooh. How long is a piece of string? Really, that's a hard one. I think you'll struggle with that, but you might maybe a bit of hunting. You might do all right, but expect to pay quite a bit for it. I mean, 60s whiskey, especially anything from the 60s these days, is considered sort of golden elixir of the sort of the golden era of the whiskey realm. But remember, the 60s was still sort of like blended whiskey was still king then. So, in terms of where the quality stocks went into, so I'd tread carefully, spending an awful lot of money on a 1960s single malt. There are a few, of course, out there. Some exceptions. There are some exceptions to that rule, and they're well documented. Things like Black Bamore and things like that, which are sort of 60s single malts, but a lot of that was sort of like, again, they were peaks rather than sort of the standard. Japanese whiskey is the perfect example. I know, Matt, not the biggest fan, but letting a Nikka coffee ground sit for 30 minutes is because it's so light and floral. Yeah, it is very light and floral, but it's also a hard one to sort of get behind all the time for me. It's Johnny Edwards, good to see you. Whiskey Gaucho, good to see you. Just dramming. Better chance to find a 60s Armagnac. And Armagnac's a funny category in that sort of like, it's, I remember, 5-8 years ago, people saying, Armagnac's like, it's like underrated gem. You'll still find some lovely old vintages for good pricing. You can still now as well. It's just, there's so much of it around. Evening Sailmaster, I'd be happy with a blended. Yeah, you can find some great blended whiskey from the 60s, especially from 1960 dated blended whiskey. Again, that's getting tricky. Because again, it wasn't the standard back then. In fact, I can't think of one example of a blended whiskey from 1960 on the dot. So that might be a bit of a tricky one. That's sort of my little rant, my little chat today, and just talking about how letting your dram sit, as we talked about just a moment ago, not getting too wrapped up in whiskey as an investment, and not really sort of getting too fired up about missing out on something because there's always something else around the corner. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll call them a night because we're hitting the half-hour mark, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the rest of this dram. There was an earlier live stream tonight, which you can also catch on this afternoon. There was an earlier live stream with some of the food pairings we were doing with the chef earlier today, which was fantastic, including that whiskey cured salmon, which was delightful. So he actually cured that salmon with a 15-year-old Glenfiddich, but for the night we're going to cure it with something a bit different, a society cask. We haven't picked it out yet, but we'll see how we go. We think we might go with something quite sweet and saccharine to cure it with. That might work quite well. Sneaky Outturn chat. Okay. Okay. There you go. That one's for you, Gaucho. Done. And secondly, the sneaky Outturn chat. Okay, well, look. Okay. There's two things I can tell you about Outturn tonight. Here's two little sort of previews about Outturn. First preview is there's the next Society Heresy bottling is going to be featured. So if you're not familiar with the Heresy line, it's things like Exotic Cargo, Pete Fairy, Old Fashioned, things like that. But the next one, the next Heresy bottling, the next experimental batched bottling is going to be in the Outturn. So that can be a nice little add-on in your cart when it comes to the Outturn day. Remember, Outturn for Christmas is the 15th of November, mid-November. It's the only month of the year where Outturn doesn't fall on the first Friday, so mark your diaries for the 15th of November. Mid-month release this month is, that's tomorrow. Good question. Mid-month is locked and loaded. I can't recall what it is off the top of my head, sorry, because we worked it out last week, and that was last week. But it will be announced in email tomorrow because it's mid-month. And what else have we got? Oh, the other preview for the other little announcement, which is about Christmas Outturn, which is a little while off still. It's a month away still from today. Is just to also be aware that I've been talking about how many good things Sydney have coming up. Melbourne, you heard it from me before, you'll hear it again. Whisky and Helmet will get the full Outturn. It's a bumper issue. They're getting everything. So they get the full Outturn on the bar. There might be one cask they don't get only because there's so few of them, but we'll see how they go. But they get the full Outturn on the bar at Whisky and Helmet, and there'll be a dedicated member-only night at the bar for members to go in and taste everything from the Outturn. So, Lucky Ducks in Melbourne, as always, you get the everything coming in there. Yes, Alex, yes, Andrew's answered you there. Really quick Auchentoshan chat and notes. What Auchentoshan? I wouldn't know what you're talking about. So that's all from me tonight. Thank you again for tuning in, as always. Andrew, Whiskey and Wisdom, Andrew, our cellar master, is going to be doing a live later this week, and I hope, and we'll catch up with him soon. And in the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow, and have a great night. And that's all from me. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Gaucho. Thank you, Alex, Calte, everyone who tuned in. I can't name you all. There's so many. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.